few weeks ago, Mrs. Peach from Mrs. Peach Thrifty Living did a book review here on Thursday BookTube about Mother Goose. And she recited a couple of the little poems in there, and she and I texted back a couple times about the book. And I said, it seemed like we just didn't have many books in the house when I was growing up, and the ones that we did have, I'll remember forever, like Mother Goose or fairy tales or certain iconic children's books. Stuck in my mind that when I had lunch the next day with a good friend of mine who's my age, I asked her the same question. I said, did your parents read to you when you were a child? Did you have children's books in the house when you were growing up? What was going on with that? I mean, we both read to our children, and I know my children read to their children, but I don't really recall my parents reading to me, with one very important exception. And my friend did not remember either. So let's talk about that. I believe that the reading thing, reading to your children before they can read themselves, is kind of a new thing, or relatively new. For our parents, our grandparents, having books in the house before a child could actually read probably felt like having a car in the driveway before your child could actually drive. Seems like most of my memories of books I read were once I could read them myself. We'd either get books from school, library, in my case, and in my friend's case, the bookmobile would come around to the neighborhoods, and that's how we'd get our books. And there weren't as many books. There was, I think, less of a selection. There were little golden books, and of course there were the Mother Goose, and there weren't as many books. There wasn't as big a selection. There were the classics, the Mother Goose, Aesop's Tales, Greek mythology, fairy stories, things like that. That wasn't the wide range of books that my children had growing up, and the books that my grandchildren have growing up. There's just every topic on earth is covered. I had one book read to me when I was growing up, and that was The Wizard of Oz by L. Frank Baum. And my father died 11 years ago, and I never had a chance to ask him why he did that and why he chose this book. My father worked full time. He was a naval officer who was in the Naval Reserves once he got out of active duty. He was working around the house, doing stuff on the weekends. He was a busy man. Both my parents were busy and had their hands full with the kids and all the sort of things that come with having a young family. Every evening, he would come and sit at the end of my bed and read me The Wizard of Oz. I don't think he did that with my younger siblings. I was the oldest child. I was always alone in the room, and I never knew why he did that. Of course, I'm very grateful. And this is the book. I was looking through it earlier to see how old it was. And as you can see, there's been some illustrations done, not by me, and maybe not even by my siblings. I don't know where this book was originally, but the book here says that there's a introduction by L. Frank Baum, the author, and that's in Chicago in April 1900. That's when it was copyrighted, 1900, 1903. Another copyright 1928, another copyright 1931, and then the copyright 1944 by the Bobbs Merrill Company. And that might be when this book was published, or this book might be from 1944. So my question is, was this a book that my father enjoyed as a child? I don't think it was my father's book, because he was already a teenager in 1944, and he was the youngest sibling. But this book had to come from someplace. And I don't know where it came from, but I have read it multiple times since he read it to me. It's got that nice classic type and the cool illustrations. Let me find a colored illustration. It was a magical story, and it still is a magical story. And if you're my age, around my generation and older, maybe a little bit younger, you will remember that before the internet, before streaming services, and before you could choose what you wanted to see on TV, you saw on TV what was the networks decided to show you on TV. And once a year, they decided to show the whole country The Wizard of Oz. And I think this fell in the fall. And we'd see the original movie, and it was like a magical night. We'd sit down. I know my siblings and I would sit in the TV room and watch the whole thing, and then the next year we'd sit down and watch the whole thing all over again, and it was just as amazing. Now you can get it whenever you want, of course, but there was something kind of special about just being able to see it that one time. And I'm sure it was special for my parents too, because they had 2 hours of uninterrupted peace. We weren't allowed to watch a lot of TV, but we were allowed to watch that, and there was benefits all around. So my question to you, do you remember your parents reading to you? Was reading to you as a child before you could read yourself a thing? Did your parents take time to read? Were there books in the house, preschool type books for you to read or be read to you? Or did the concept of books in the house only come up when you were already of reading age? And do you read to your children, or did you read to your children? Do your children read to their children if you have children and grandchildren? I think the whole concept of books in the home and reading as a family activity has definitely changed. So that is my booktube for tonight. And I thank Mrs. Peach very much for doing the chat about Mother Goose, because it made me think about things I'd never thought about before, like culturally. When did reading to your children start? When did having early childhood books in the house start? What's that all about? So those are my thoughts for this evening. And if you have not read The Wizard of Oz, the original version by L. Frank Baum, I highly suggest you do. The movie was excellent, but this is even more excellent. Thank you so much for watching.